Good morning, and thanks for joining us on Market Day Report. I'm Christina Loren. The FCC declared August Rural Broadband Month, and today they're meeting in our nation's capital to discuss the needs of high-speed internet for rural farm and ranch communities. RFD-TV's D.C. Bureau Chief Sarah Mock joins us in Washington.
Well, thank you so much, Christina. We are here on a busy morning in the nation's capital, here at the Federal Communications Commission. We're actually just outside the public hearing right now, where Commissioner Pai and his fellow commissioners are talking about priorities for rural broadband. Of course, Commissioner Pai announced that August is Rural Broadband Month here at the FCC, and he has some big priorities for getting done this month to, of course, get broadband to the 23 million Americans who currently across the country don't have access or are underserved for broadband. Now, the big priorities today are, of course, dealing with the Connect America Fund auction. That is a auction which actually we just witnessed the vote here, and it did pass to distribute almost $2 billion to assist companies across the country in providing that rural broadband. That will be distributed over the next 10 years, about $198 million a year to companies, really going that extra mile to serve people in underserved areas. Commissioner Clyburn this morning actually told a very powerful story about a community she visited in Ohio, where nearly 80% of the citizens didn't have access to rural broadband. The commissioners are really moved by stories like that, and it's very evident, kind of across the spectrum here, that this is a big priority in getting money in the form of these auctions. So today's vote was actually just to start public comment. So the funds will begin to be dispersed in 2018. Public comment, of course, an important part of any kind of federal lawmaking. And then the other big priority today is, of course, the Mobility Fund Challenge process. This is basically for a way for companies and groups to be able to challenge whether or not an area is underserved under the Federal Communications Commission basically guidelines. And so they're trying to build a more efficient and practical process for companies to be able to do that, and starting that process today with the vote this morning. So that's what the commissioners are here to do today. We'll see how that all plays out. Lots of things on the agenda and a lot of important things to cover in terms of delivering broadband. Christina?
Really appreciate that, Sarah. We're happy to have you right there on the ground floor in Washington. D.C. Bureau Chief Sarah Mock from our Washington office. We really appreciate that report.
Good morning, and thanks for watching the Market Day Report. I'm Janet Adkisson. Well, the FCC declared August Rural Broadband Month. Today, they're meeting to discuss the needs of high-speed internet in our nation's farm and ranch communities. RFD-TV's D.C. Bureau Chief Sarah Mock joins us in Washington. Sarah?
Good morning, Janet. Thank you so much. We are here at the Federal Communications Commission for their public hearing, their kind of kickoff to that Rural Broadband Month, as Commissioner Pai announced. We've had an exciting morning so far. A couple of big issues that the FCC is dealing with, of course, the big focus being rural broadband. But how to address that problem isn't always clear. They have a couple of big goals: access, affordability for those folks in rural America, and then, of course, controlling the cost here in D.C., what the federal government will spend on that. So, the access question, of course, is getting those 23 million underserved or unserved people in rural America connection either through broadband, which this morning the commission approved the beginning of public notice for $2 billion, about $2 billion worth of funds to be distributed over the next 10 years. That's about $198 million a year to folks who are trying to provide rural broadband across the nation. Then, of course, they're also talking about 4G networks, making sure that 4G is getting to places so that folks can, of course, access data on their cell phones, get wireless internet that way as well. There's also that question of cost. In a recent study, Microsoft actually found that it could cost as much as $12 billion to really serve all those underserved areas across the country. So the Commission has very much paying attention to the cost of that program going forward, and are trying to find the most cost-effective way to make sure that, of course, those people providing broadband in rural communities are using the funds effectively, and that private money is coming up to meet it as well. So lots of questions here today, lots of movement made, lots of public notice being opened and room for comment now going forward. And I think the commissioners should be proud of what they did today. They passed every proposal that came before them, and they even finished up their meeting a little bit early. You can see people leaving the meeting room behind me. It's supposed to go till 12:30 this morning, but it actually ended about half an hour early. So success here in Washington as Rural Broadband Month gets kicked off here at the Federal Communications Commission. Janet?
Well, Sarah, thank you very much for that report. We certainly appreciate it. Again, D.C. Bureau Chief Sarah Mock reporting from the FCC building there on Capitol Hill. Of course, she'll have more in the month ahead.